have what I consider to be bad news. H.A. Goodman is with us no more. H.A. Goodman was found in a Twitter suicide just a day or so ago, leaving a brutal Twitter rant at all of his enemies. This one last stand of a man looking out at his enemies and raising his fist to his enemies before offing himself. Before I get to the tweets, it is a sad day. H.A. has fallen. I was contacted by H.A. and these are just things that are affiliated with H.A. You know, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. There's probably another Hillary Clinton lurking in here somewhere. But H.A. has always been a friend of the show. And even when I've gone after H.A., it's always been in the context of good humor. So I do this with a bit of tinge of sadness, seeing him go. I was standing in the bar in the saloon, and I had my fedora on, and I was taking a shot of vodka, and I get a message from H.A., and he says, "I'm leaving." And I said, "What do you mean you're leaving?" And I can tell by the look in his eye and the way he's holding his hat that he was serious, that he was going to go. And he says, "You may want to take a look at the front page of my site." And I asked him, I said, "You know, what's going on? Why are you leaving?" And he looks at me in the moonlight, and it hits his eye just right. It was glimmer. And his unshaven beard, he looked at me, he says, "There's too much negativity." And with that, I hugged him close to my chest. And he pulls away, says, "I must go." And he walks out into the moonlight. And under a canopy of darkness, with a hung moon, I sat there and wept. You can either believe that happened or not. Some of it or all of it, maybe none of it, has taken place. But what is absolutely true is his account is deleted. If you go there to check his account, it will be gone. Now, for that point, I want to go into the Twitter rant. This classic tale of a man looking out at his enemies, screeching fire and fury at, their essentially attacks on him and rebutting attacks that were placed on him in his essentially offensive defense of Donald Trump. His account is gone, but the Wayback Machine has most of them, so I kind of want to go through some of these, because some of these are amazing. Let's go through these. So this is number 5. I don't have the first 4 or 5, so I don't know what those are. But I think those were attacks on Cal from TYT. To Bobeska Go, "Nobody knows who you are, so this way," and I have no idea who this person is, so he's right. "This tweet might help you. Please tell your idiot interns to stop writing hit pieces on me. Over 10 is a bit much, although I can say being disparaged by your blog is traumatizing. I can't say it's being that traumatizing. More people read the messages scrawled in I suspect this is a toilet or something. Here's another one. An abandoned porta potty. Oh, okay. Here's the next one. An abandoned porta potty in your illustrious publication. To the identity politics people, SJW professional outrage, but only if it's Trump, not when it's Clinton, says they're all look-alike. Enjoy your voting for better or 2020, the good white male candidate, or Biden, another white male. That's kind of like, you guys are SJWs, you want somebody who's of color, and you're going to end up with Beto or Biden. For the anarchist socialists hate Trump but pretend to hate Democrats, but also pretend to hate Democrat people, you probably should burn in hell for calling Jewish conservatives or Trump voters Nazis. And then again, you're too stupid to realize how disgusting that is, and you never read a book on the Holocaust. Ish. I mean, I think Nazis is used far too often. I think it's, far too often. But if you're talking about Israel itself, and you're talking about some of the policies that Israel is taking on, some of those policies did replicate the Nazis. I mean, if you're talking about something happens as forced punishment for the entirety or for the whole over the actions of a few, but it's not death camps in the same way that Nazis have death camps. So fair enough. Or concept of history, to the extreme left, outrage cult, people who call everyone Nazis. Nobody in real life gives a shit about your pseudo-intellectual theories. They're a bunch of nonsense used only to condemn because you exist to condemn others with Twitter. In real life, people don't walk around with a gigantic chip on their shoulder calling strangers racist, tying everything to some theory professor as a woman study environmental justice course in Berkeley once wrote in 1998. Nobody gives a shit about what you think. Now, that may be true or false. It's true that there's bubbles. Like, the left is in a bubble for the same point, in the same way that the right wing is to some degree in a bubble. But that's everybody exists in their own world of sorts. Within the context of existing in that world, the left may have certain predilections that the rest of the population or the other bubbles don't necessarily have. That is true, but that's true for all of the bubbles. Meaning it's one of those things that in every situation, the little cliques that people come up with, there are going to be differences between a clique versus what would maybe be considered somewhat of a mainstream perspective. So I guess I'm saying that's right, but it's right in a way it's right across the board. Let's keep going. From your Twitter friends who aren't really friends to TYT Network, not Jimmy Dore. I love Jimmy Dore. I love that. I love that he makes the distinction. Hey, no, not Dore. Hands off Dore. Everyone knows Cenk and company basically work to further the Democratic talking points, so start your broadcast with, "We don't even believe this, but this will help Trump lose," etc. That's true. I am sorry, that's true. TYT is a sheepdog. I mean, at this point, they just further Democratic games. They fuse themselves to the Democratic Party through this Justice Democrat stuff, and they try to act as if, Cenk being the conduit between these two things. Their network has gone full bore against Trump. Objectivity out the window. So they are trying to further Democratic games because they want to get their particular Democrats in office. So he's right. Let's see. Here's another one. To Russia influence, Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy theorists, Democrats. You have to be the stupidest people alive to think that Putin will conspire with Trump to influence our elections through fucking Facebook ads nobody saw or cared about. Again, he's right. He's right. They're trying to say that Facebook and Twitter ads and now Instagram had the same effect of all of these newspapers pushed for Hillary Clinton, all of these political ads. They spent $1 billion on political ads. They spent millions on their own Facebook and Twitter ads. But a bunch of bizarre ads that just sought to further division and to be some kind of clickbait thing for some kind of money thing is being used as an excuse, saying that this somehow helped Trump get elected. It is nonsense. Even from the standpoint of the positioning and the posturing that the United States has taken towards Russia, it has been more hostile under the Trump administration than even under the Obama administration. So, again, he's right. They've used this purely as a thing of politics. They didn't want to talk about progressive issues. They didn't want to deal with the fact that the Hillary Clinton cheated in the primary. They didn't want to deal with the fact that she lost and why she lost. And instead, to pivot, Russia and Trump. Russia and Trump create the slow bleed, and the people ran with it and went with it and believed it. They believed it because they were incentivized to believe it because they hated Donald Trump. They believed it in the same way that Republicans will call Obama a socialist and a communist, even though he gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. It didn't matter whether it was true. They just wanted to attack him with it and hit him with it. And if it was a stick they could hit him with it, they didn't necessarily care whether the stick was accurate or not. They were incentivized to believe it. That's my point. So he's right. I agree with him. Paid attention to, then again, you're caught in the case of the media and the intel criminals like Comey, Brennan, Clapper legitimize your conspiracy theories to the point of even drunko Beto that's wrong. That's wrong. Repeated them in debates. The good progressive he is to those who hate President Trump. Unfortunately, to some degree, he's right on this also. They are pushing Beto as if he's a presidential hopeful. Beto, I call him the White Obama. I call him the White Obama because he's a blank palette where people can put whatever they want to believe onto without him necessarily committing to any particular thing. Meaning, if you ask me if he's for Medicare for all, he'd give you this wishy-washy answer that boils down to a no. He's right. He's right. Understand, Trump is the only president in 18 years to bring home Americans from war, the only president ever to preside over the start of a peace negotiation between North Korea and South Korea, and will soon sign prison reform. So take your Trump hate and shove it. Trump is more liberal. Yeah, no on the more liberal part. And let's be honest, Trump has given massive tax cuts to the top 1%. Trump has been trying to get rid of health care to millions of Americans. You know, let's not paint him as some liberal. That said, Trump has been the first one to want to bring these soldiers home. And it is also true that people booed and jeered him for trying to bring these soldiers home across political space. Went after him for doing this. Even though, what is the point of us being there? I mean, at this point, we're in somebody else's country illegally. Russia and Syria pretty much have it under control from the standpoint of ISIS, which is the overt reason that we said that we were there, which gets across the point that we're probably there for other reasons than the stated objective of ISIS. That said, to some degree, he's right. You have to give him points on this. As for the North and South Peace Korea, that is true, but that's true in an odd way. We have still been instigating ourselves between that process, making that process that much more difficult when the two countries seem to want to unify. That said, Trump has been the one that gave the space to allow it to take place. So again, I give him credit on that. Let's see. The best president ever, President Obama, deported more immigrants than anyone in history, 2.5 million, presided over the greatest domestic oil production in the United States. Climate change got us into Syria and Yemen. Yes, that's true. But Donald Trump is not any better on those things. He's been even more ghastly than Obama with the standpoint of deportations, even though he hasn't hit Obama's numbers. As for the oil production, that is also true that Obama presided over that. I mean, look, he's pointing out hypocrisy. You say you're for this, but your president was doing the thing that you say you're against. And now you're attacking this new president for doing the same thing. Yes, but also Donald Trump is doing worse. And so, you know, it's like, I understand you bringing up the point, but the point is only just there to show the hypocrisy of it, not necessarily that Donald Trump is any better on it, at least in my mind. I'm a Trump supporter, will vote for Trump in 2020 because he's bringing Americans home and never-ending wars. His foreign policy gives Max Boot and other neocon fits, and his allegiance to the country, not to the media or the generals or anyone else. He's authentic, unlike Democrats. Donald Trump is not authentic. I mean, come on. I mean, you bring John Bolton and Mike Pompeo to be your security advisors. People of policy. You're bringing them in those positions because you want a particular policy articulated. You don't bring them there. But what's his name? Bolton is a war criminal and has been even going after the International Criminal Court. That's no. That's a no. Like, the authentic thing is nonsense. And we have yet to see what's going to take place with Iran, even though I give you credit for bringing the troops home potentially. I mean, we haven't brought them home yet, and it sounds like he was changing his mind after talking to Lindsey Graham. But just broaching the topic. So yes, I give you points. But authentic, come on. Donald Trump lies as easily as breathing. There is no way to believe anything that comes out of his mouth, and he lies flagrantly. Lying is not necessarily authentic, even though there's an authenticness to the fact that the person lies, if that makes sense. It's an odd dialectic. But he's also right where he's making this point that, look, corporate Democrats are not authentic. These are not things that these guys would have articulated from the standpoint of policy. And to some degree, he's right that they wouldn't have done this from the standpoint of policy, but I don't think that's a call to being authentic. But to some degree, I agree with him. Many of these people, they put on acts, but that's most politicians. That's not just indicative of one or the other. I guess the part I disagree with is that Donald Trump is authentic. He's not authentic. It doesn't come across to me as he's authentic. I don't think lying is an authentic quality. Let's keep going. If you think Trump is racist but voted for Hillary Clinton, you're nothing but a hypocrite. Clinton continues to make statements that would lose people their jobs in this day and age. Finally, for those who hate Israel, Hamas executed 23 Palestinians in 2014. Care to call? I mean, come on. I understand Hamas might have executed 24 Hamas, but Israel has been having kill sessions where they've been shooting people with live ammunition at the gates, killing hundreds while at the same token injuring thousands. Beforehand, they had a situation where Israel went in and killed thousands, 80% of which were civilians. Let's, make a difference between those things. It's not that nobody cared about the Hamas. It's the order of magnitude where one country is occupying another country and continues to take land from that other country while at the same token pacifying the populations that's pushing back against it. I mean, let's be clear. Hamas is a reaction, not necessarily the inciting thing in and of itself. Hamas Nazis, probably not. Most people today who hate Israel are either somewhat pure anti-Semitic, but we see exactly where you're coming from. Focusing 100% on the country while ignoring numerous terrorist groups committing heinous atrocities exposes your true intentions. No, dude, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, people push this, anti-Semitic nonsense for people who are making criticisms of the government's policies. I will make criticism on pretty much any government's policies. That doesn't necessarily make me think some kind of way about the individuals who are in the country itself. I hope that makes sense. The fact of the matter is, Israel is occupying somebody else's land and has nuclear weapons and gets billions of dollars from us, not to mention military support, and it uses that to pacify the population that's around and to maintain its occupation of that territory, stealing and appropriating more land against international law, but with the protection of the United States. Now, that's why the focus is there. The hostilities between the Arabs and the Jews in this case was somewhat contrived based on land. This wasn't necessarily a religious argument, but it became this, big to-do over the fact that you're occupying somebody else's land. I mean, come on, be honest. Let's see. And that has nothing to do with you being Jewish. That has everything to do with your country doing that. You just so happen to be Jewish, if that makes sense. It's not the identity of the person. It's a policy that causes the disruption. Finally, another message to Kyle Kalinske. You should probably defend WikiLeaks and use your giant platform to support Julian Assange, but that might require you to have some courage. So if it gets a suggestion, can't fight the oligarchy by snuggling up next to Cenk and Max Boot. Oh, God. I agree with him on support WikiLeaks. Firmly agree with him on that part, though. Okay, who else? What else? Oh, the Sam Cedar. Anytime you want to debate, the tweet that got you in trouble for MSNBC, let me know. Essentially, he's making the point that Sam Cedar made a rape joke about his daughter. It was kind of gross. He got fired and then got rehired. I even made a video in support of Sam Cedar on that because despite making a rape joke, you shouldn't have fired him for that. Well, what was clearly considered a joke, despite how nasty it was. But his point is, Anytime you want to debate the tweet that got you in trouble with MSNBC, let me know. Kind of a double standard where others get fired for jokes, but you get rehired. To David Packman, I oppose what was done to you by that journalist. To both, Trump is a much better president than Obama. Would debate both of you or anyone else on the platform on the issue. Okay, I'll be deleting this entire account in about an hour. Feel free to take screenshots of the comments. I do appreciate good people I've come across here and anywhere else. Who wants to keep in touch with my books and latest articles and segments, etc.? Email me at contactgoodman78@gmail. God bless. Happy New Year's and Trump 2020. Oh, I forgot to tell you that Joan Walsh, for your tremendous support of my writing, tell Salon never to publish me because I was 100% accurate and poor Hillary lost trying to get HuffPost not to publish me. That didn't work, and not possibly the Hill to stop. Yeah, this is epic Grant. Also, Joan Walsh, maybe you can tell future generations in your books why Hillary Clinton called black people super predators, why she helped destroy Libya, why she voted for Iraq, why she used the birth myth in 2008, along with why she survived the Bosnian snipers and used a private server to transfer special access programs intel. This is like a person in a movie dying, and they spend like the last death scene uttering a lot of information at the last minute. Anyway, it's been fun, but I'll be leaving Twitter soon, so take a screenshot of these messages. Thanks. And here's his latest op-ed. Yeah. Yeah, this is funny to me. Charles Pera, Nick Brana doing I told you so backflips right now. Hope Kalinchek are happy. They shift third party. Maybe in 40 years they can reform the party. I don't know, man. Creative secular is the best. So Jamal agrees with HAO on every post except the ones he's supporting Israel. I agree with him on some of it, not all of it. I mean, the ones I agree with him on has to do with his critiques of the Democratic Party, right? I don't know who some of these people are, so I can't necessarily go too far with it. But I agree with him that they're trying to push Beto. I agree with him on the Nazi thing, yes and no. I agree with him on his protection of Dore. But yeah, he's going after TYT. I agree with him with the Russiagate stuff. I mean, whether you look at this or not, a lot of this has nothing to do with Democratic or Republican politics. His critiques here had everything to do with, you could say, establishment Democrats, and some of the narratives that were pushing forth that was just being completely hypocritical from one administration to the next. So yeah, I agree with him on some of it. It just need to depend on what it is. All right, I'm not gonna keep this one long. I just thought this was interesting. I don't tend to always do interpolitical scuffles from the standpoint of the shows themselves, but HA has been a friend of the show, and if he's going to off himself, I at the very least want to be there at the end. So, Moni G, what's happening, Moni G? He's as delirious as Jamal is about Bernie affecting the Democratic Party. Jamal, you need to really write a novel about you and HA's drinking buddyhood. It really captured my imagination. Still trying to picture HA unshaved. I see it in these epic terms just because it's like, I'm gonna end my life now, but I have shit that I want to get off my chest just before I go. That's hilarious. Pop reality. Jimmy Dore was right. No takeover. Vote no on PayGo. Even Justice Democrats. Yeah, vote no on PayGo. Yeah, vote no on PayGo. All right. I'll end this. Like all of the other progressive commentators here on YouTube, Thomas has to choose between reformism and revolution. That is the question, right? Do you change it or do you burn it to the ground? With this idea of something better coming after the fact that you burned it to the ground. That is always the question. That's not just the YouTuber. That's anybody who's dealing with the political space. Are you going to work with the political lines, or are you going to work outside of the political lines? Are you going to be Batman or Superman? Which one are you going to be? So, that's true, but that's true is somewhat of an absolute. It's like saying up is up. I don't think there's a magical door. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's a situation where you just, we teach ourselves to be somewhat docile in a political context. You get your vote every 2 or 4 years, and that's what you go and do, and that's your duty. Civics need to be a little bit more engaged in that, especially if you're going to have this type of adversarial democratic process. I don't have the strong thought that you just vote your way out of the situation. And so I don't have this belief that things get better before they get worse. Whether you want to talk about climate or whether you want to talk about the interaction between one another. The Democratic Party winning the House of Representatives, even though it might have put a chill on Donald Trump, it also gave across this idea that the Democratic Party doesn't have to do anything in order to regain the position in Congress. That ultimately just being in opposition to Trump was enough. They failed on a magnificent fucking level, losing 1,100 seats all throughout the United States. And after losing the presidency to a reality show host, that didn't send them back in order to, hey, we need to figure out why we lost so badly. We have to figure out why the public is so pissed off, why they hate us so much. They didn't do that. They went with this kind of cynical calculus of, he's going to be bad, the people are going to come right back around to us. And that's exactly what took place. Maybe the blue wave should have been a little bit more, but at the very least it was enough for them to take the House of Representatives. And it was also enough to show that despite not changing squat, people would come back. It's always the action consequence. In this case, yes, you put a chill on any forward progress from the standpoint of what Donald Trump wants to do in a unilateral way with the two houses. But simultaneously, you've also given inroads to this idea that you don't necessarily have to change in order to get back an election after losing such a magnificent way. And by the way, the account that's gone for HA, that's just his Twitter account. He's still active on YouTube. He's still active on the other platforms. This is purely his Twitter account that is deactivated. It's class war, Jamal. Austerity is simply mocking, sneering, malicious neoliberal code for class war. I agree with you. I think that class war was initiated for the past 40, 50 years in an odd way, because the public itself felt some kind of way about dealing with issues of class, but simultaneously being assaulted in a class war way. You can look at the wealth that's being accrued to the top. You can look at the fact that wages hasn't budged for one section of the society, but exploded in the other section of the society. Things being cut from the standpoint of public services while giving tax cuts to the top 1%. Yeah, it's a sneering neoliberal policy. Like Donald Trump saying that we can't afford to pay federal workers more because we're hurting for cash, while simultaneously giving a $2 trillion tax cut that goes primarily to the top 1%, essentially putting that on our backs. 95% of the wealth went to the top 1% under Obama. What is that number going to be under Donald Trump? So, yes. All right. I'm going to end this. Nick Braun is doing I Told You So backflips right now. Hope Cal and Jenk are happy. They shift third parties. Maybe in 40 years they can perform the party. Third parties are hard, man. I don't, like, Cal has taken this kind of position of, if a third party is doing well, I'll support the third party. Otherwise, I'm going to support the Democratic Party. And looking at this as working within the party itself, within the Democratic Party itself. This, to some degree, is a limiting factor on this. there is something to be said for being able to withdraw support in the same way that you are willing to give support. And not voting for a particular party is tantamount to showing displeasure. It's like it's a vote, even if it's a non-vote. It's still a vote in some degree. That is necessary in some cases. That you're not necessarily going to change just purely from the standpoint of getting the number of votes. It's also this degree of pressure that you can put on the political system by not giving a particular vote. Like, both matter. Both, to some degree, are necessary. Co-ops, in what context? Yeah, worker co-ops. That should be something that we push, and that should be one of the main policies of the left. Like, if you're having this conversation with people and you want to explain how you're going to make sure that person get more wages, how you're going to make sure those companies don't ship those jobs overseas, how are you going to do these things when all of the incentives in the capitalistic system are to do the opposite? Meaning, the reason that wealth, income, and all the stuff has exploded is because the system has worked in the way the system has. This is not one of those things that's a mistake or a quirk. The system has worked the way it has. It's the expression of the capitalistic system. Human beings within a capitalistic system behave in a particular way, and this is the way they behave. And the way that they behave accrues wealth to a top 1% at the expense of everyone else. That's what we have. Do you deal with that system or not? Do you deal with that system or not? And do you believe that you can deal with that system purely within the political context? When up to this point, that answer has been no. There's been a blip talking about FDR, but up to this point, no. How do you move that political system when all the incentives and the drives are built in a way that influence is associated most closely with cash? How do you, as someone without cash, move the crowd and move the political dial on that? I've said you have dollars or you have pitchforks. And in this case, there needs to be a massive number of pitchforks. The people from Occupy Wall Street, hopefully those people are still there, still angry. And we need our own yellow vests. The political space can move in your interests, but it helps it when you have an outside force that's pushing and compelling the political space to move. Up to this point, we haven't had that. I mean, the Vietnam War was one, and if I'm not mistaken, the Iraq War became one of these kind of mass protests. Occupy Wall Street was one. But that was too diffuse and not necessarily specific enough to move the dial. Not to mention you didn't have a president that was willing to do anything with that. And instead, that president turned around and attacked Occupy Wall Street. It's like you get the opportunity to do something because you have a crowd pushing you, and it's like, yeah, we don't want that crowd. We don't want that crowd. I want a president that would use the mob in this case. And I don't mean it for bad ends. I mean it for good ends. And I mean this from the left. Using the mob from the right is kind of terrifying. So, all right. Clickbait title, H.A. Style. That's not clickbait. H.A. did commit Twitter suicide. He deleted his account. He deleted his account. Trudy, if we would have stood up when he asked us to, we would have prevailed. Our fault he bent. Who are you talking about, Sanders? If we would have stood up when he asked us to, we would have prevailed. Our fault that he bent. Yeah, I'm not getting into this thing where we're having we're calling stuff our fault and everything else. Look, the only thing that's real is what's real. What could have happened didn't happen. So it is what it is. You can work with what you got. In this case, the thing that we're working with is what takes place next. And how do you move that? Meaning, how do you change that and move that political dial? Does Sanders run again in 2020? If he does, that presents an amazing opportunity, providing the chance his potential to win. And if he does win, that is this is the first time in my lifetime where there's a path. Up to this point, I haven't even seen a path. So that's the way I look at this stuff. If we would have stood up when he asked us to, we would have prevailed. Our fault he bent. I don't think it's our fault, Trudy. I mean, I don't know what people would have done. Jesus, take the wheel. I'll click on the Jamsters bait long before I entertain empty BS. That's not clickbait. That's not clickbait. They did commit Twitter suicide. What am I missing? What am I missing? Clickbait. That's not a clickbait title. I just want Tulsi to run to see the Hillbots call her sexist, sexist and racist. I know. I know. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Some people can't read, Jamal. Thank you, man. For a second, I was concerned for AJ. It's Twitter suicide. He ended up deleting his account, leaving a vicious Twitter rant. And like I said, the Twitter rant is not, it's not cut in red and blue terms, if that makes sense. It's cut from the standpoint of, you have been massively hypocritical in your attacks on me. And your party said X, and yet your party is doing essentially the same thing that it's going after people for. That's the context of a lot of this stuff. I don't agree with him with the Nazi stuff for Israel, but his critiques on the Democratic Party and in some respects how he was attacked, yes, I agree with him. Nice PR shirt. Oh, thank you. How many times did Bernie say when McConnell looks out the window, he should see millions of us? Oh, I see. I agree with you, Trudy. In everyday life, though, people have this, they have to work. They have to make ends meet. Like, how do you be out on Capitol Hill when you're insecure and you're barely making ends meet? Like, it makes it difficult to do that. So I feel you on that. Yeah, I feel you on that. And I agree with you on that. Mark Benjamin, can you do a story on PayPal and patron censorship stories? I didn't know PayPal was involved in that. I heard about Patreon, at least some of the people. Cory Booker is my senator. Ugh. You don't use that phraseology for a lot of things. What are you talking about? I committed brunch suicide. Oh, phraseology, Twitter suicide. I didn't know what else to call it. I was thinking of calling it H.A. Goodman deletes his account. But Twitter suicide sounds far more epic like than anything else. Especially in the way I saw this in my head, with H.A. essentially standing on a podium on a rock face, spitting fire and anger to all of the people who've essentially pissed on him or shit on him or said bad words about him. And he says this just before tumbling off of a cliff face. Oh no, I saw it in more epic terms than just deleting his account. Chris Hayes vowed to focus on policies this election season. Did he now? Did he now? Did he now? Twitter suicide is a good term. Thank you, Psychotronic. Thank you. Hayes is doing his job. right. He's going to focus on policy. Oh, so he's going to do his job. According to Cal. Autoerotic Twitter asphyxiation. Yeah, I saw this more epic. In my head, I had him walking out of a bar in this kind of cowboy way where, it's like it gets dark and he just walks out of the bar. He's like, I'm hanging on my 6 shooters and I'm calling it in. JMC Clinton, I have no faith in Chris Hayes. That's brutal. I'm beginning to think that TYT and progressive Democrats are controlled opposition. Some of them are. I mean, look, not everybody who calls himself a lefty is a lefty. That's one of those things that's understood. Even from the standpoint of media, there was this situation, one of the things that was revealed were that there were some reporters who pretended to be on Sanders' side and then at the last minute could turn around and say, okay, now I'm going to support Clinton, and because I was a Bernie supporter, you should also follow me into supporting Clinton. Like, there is some shady stuff going on in the background from the standpoint of the political space. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. The order of chaos. So I would like to see a roundtable with you, JT, and others put forth solutions that can save the world before the end. The rich want us to put austerity against the poor under the guise of fixing the world. I am far more cynical on this front. Like, and it's not that I would like to be cynical on this front. I just don't see it. Like, you're talking about massive transformation from the standpoint of an economic system that prioritizes, you could say, some degree, waste, and that prioritizes profits over living situations of human beings. And to does so to such a degree that it's eating the planet alive. But the planet, year after year after year, have been heating up based on human behavior in the planet. The scientists of the planet knew that the planet was heating up based on the behavior of the human beings on the planet. But changing the human behavior in this case meant changing the capitalistic system itself. And that wasn't something that was going to be allowed, meaning a thing that's not real, that was purely conceptual, was giving dominance over something that was real, even to the degree that it's ending our existence on this planet. There's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet. Everybody can see the asteroid that's going to hit the planet. They can look at it. Every day they're going to have a little monitor that ticks how close the asteroid gets to the planet. But people still say, but my profits! My profits! Under this particular game space, there's certain rules and powers that are associated with it just based on the way human beings have agreed to behave. And in some of those rules, there is a mystical thing called cash. And that mystical thing of cash, it's not really a real thing, it's purely just a conceptual thing. That cash can be imbued in qualities in a rock, or it could be electronic, or it could be a piece of paper. Doesn't really matter what it is. It just matters that the public itself gives a certain degree of value to it and has agreed that certain things would take place at the dispensing of that product. It's like a magical quality in a conceptual game space. But let's be very clear that there is a real world and there is this kind of make-believe world where this cash thing inhabits, and the real world is a thing that is under threat. The idea of screaming about profits when the world is at stake is terrifying. Utterly terrifying that that's the conversation that takes place. I'm cynical of this. I don't see how that changes. It's something that we know. ExxonMobil knew about it going back to the 80s. They didn't want to do anything about it, and they turned around and attacked the science because the science was getting across that what they were doing was destroying the planet. Like sitting at a round table. To what end? I'm skeptical of this. I find it horrifying that Alan Moore in The Watchmen was right. Alan Moore in The Watchmen. That's one of my favorite movies, by the way. Eating bananas too fast is a very bad thing. Okay, fair enough. Controlled opposition doesn't even have to be coordinated. You just signal boost to help fund those voices. It's more organic. They do the same journalists like. So, the intelligence thing that was in the UK, part of what they were doing was sending off, they would, in an organized way, with various media personalities, essentially go after a particular story in order to gain a certain resonance, in order to affect a particular agenda. I'm not inclined to believe, like, we know that the United States, the CIA, has a Twitter army. We know other countries have their Twitter armies. It's hard to know what is organic from the standpoint of what the public actually wants, as opposed to what is driven by some sort of, group playing the angles. Um, my focus, though, tends to be on lefty policy because regardless of what these other groups want, these are the things that I want. And I want to move the crowd in that direction. So, I didn't say that. I didn't say it was an asset. No, I didn't say that at all. I think you guys are having a conversation that I'm not seeing. Hey, if you travel some more, can you head over to the London to do a show from an Ecuadorian embassy? I would love to. The only reason I didn't get the opportunity to do it this time, there were two reasons. Anywhere I go, I would have to get treatments. I've noted that before. Regardless of where I go around the world, I would have to get some kind of dialysis session within the context of a few days. I can last 7. Worst can worst, I can last 9, but that is going to be feeling like hell. Ideally, no more than 5, which means that hopping in, I would have to find another place where I can hop out in order to get a treatment from a cheaper location. This time around, I had considered going to London because I wanted to go to London, to see the Mac, and give him port wine because he wanted a port wine from Portugal. But just to be in London, I like London. And yeah, I would have loved to do a show there, but the logistics became a pain in the ass. Trying to get a flight home for my mom on Christmas, that started to take more time in regards to occupying what I needed to accomplish. So, all right, I'm gonna end this. Don't be upset, Jamal. He wears Tom Hartman pajamas to bed over his underoos. Oh God. H.A. Badman. H.A. Badman indeed. What did H.A. say? I went over that. I'm not going to go over it again. But he left a vicious Twitter rant that went for like 25 tweets, just back to back to back to back, essentially pointing out all of his enemies. And not just his enemies, attacking some of the hypocrisies that the Democratic Party has been engaged in order to attack Donald Trump. So, like I said, a lot of it I agree with. A lot of it I agree with. And while you're here, Balthazar, I'm going to read your tweet again. Cuz Nuzzler. Rudy Giuliani, you misspelled it in your title. Actually, when I pushed the video back up, I caught the spelling, and I got it before I saw this. So, but thank you. Is a Cuz Nuzzler. His first wife was his first cousin. I guess this proves a broken clock is still right twice a day. I did not know that. He's a Cuz Nuzzler. I didn't know Giuliani married his first cousin. That's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't even know that was legal. Let alone Giuliani doing that. That's funny. Trudy, I have star-studded onesies. Oh, that's funny. Onesie pajamas. I just wish I saw a way out of this mess. Me too, Bob. I just don't think there are any magical doors. And by magical doors, I just mean... Look, by the way I see it, a construct has been created where the Democratic Party plays towards cultural inclusivity, meaning, multiculturalism doesn't necessarily hurt the profits of the people who are putting money in the Democratic Party's pocket, so they're perfectly okay with multiculturalism. But once you get into matters that dig deeper into the multiculturalism, that affect their wallets, then at that point, how do we pay for it? Is the refrain that tends to come up when you're talking about services and government, providing governmental services that makes the expenses of the individual's life go down. For example, healthcare, education. In some countries, they don't even know what it means to have a hospital bill, or for that matter, an education bill. One second. With that construct, it's not part of the reason that the construct works is because the Republican Party is bad on issues of race, and are somewhat repulsive from the standpoint of other races and sexualities and stuff like that, which means all these people go into the Democratic Party. The protector of identity, it's a real thing, meaning people do consider their identity as a real thing. It's close to them. And so it makes all the sense in the world that they care about this particular thing. And if the Democratic Party is there to say, hey, we represent that identity space, and the other party doesn't, then by default, they're going to get more of the vote from that standpoint. The problem with this is, if you take economics off the table, if because your donors and their donors are for the most part the same, and you just kind of make this tacit agreement that we don't deal with things of economics, then you deal with multiculturalism purely on its face without dealing with the underlying issues that drive a certain degree of poverty across the board. Not just for anybody like whites or blacks, but across the board. One section of the economic class gets gangbusters in regards to their profits, but making it at the expense of the other part of the class. Even though people haven't talked about class war has been waged on the other part of the economic class, the 99%, for the past 50, 60 years. In the 70s, the wage earning stopped, meaning real wages. It stopped for the bottom part. For the top 1%, it went through the roof. My point is this. That model needs to break. Meaning that model of being able to use identity as being the sole thing that makes a delineation between the 2 points. That model needs to break. That model breaking, however, has consequences. Because identity is one of the real things that comes up from the standpoint of discourse. If that model breaks, there is some difference in the way that the Republican Party operates versus the Democratic Party operates. The question becomes, is the difference large enough for you to vote for one or the other, with this idea that one of them losing should inspire a certain degree of change. And even though they may take multiple losses, that change will take place. Outside of breaking that model, I don't know how to change that. Outside of it being clear that this is not a pathway to win, which means that the ability to accept losses, even if these losses are from knuckle draggers, becomes one of the solutions and one of the things of a certain degree of pain that needs to be taken before anything real from a standpoint of change takes place in the ideologies of the party. Yeah, Bob, outside of breaking the identity model, I don't know how you change it. Just saying. There's no left and right, just the rich and us. Yes, Dan Harris. Yes, I agree with that. No way but our feet. Trudy, I even agree with that. And identity is what makes this duopoly possible. Bob, I agree with you on this to some degree. I mean, I don't agree with you if it gets to be an absolutist perspective. Understand that the positions that we endure and that we live through push us and prod us in particular ways. And sometimes because we live through a particular condition, we're more hawkish in the opposite area of that condition. So we grow up in this era where identity is the thing that allows a duopoly to exist, where you have a Democratic Party that hugs identity in one sense and a Republican Party that hugs it in the other sense and uses this to play against one another. First, there needs to be acknowledgement that there is a such thing as identity when these guys are dealing with this in a political space. But acknowledge that you can also do two things at once. You can walk and chew gum, meaning I can defend people's identity. I can defend a woman's right to choose. I can do all that while simultaneously dealing with the economic needs. In fact, not I can do all that. I should be doing all that. I agree with you. Identity makes it work. But at the same token, there is a such thing as identity from the standpoint of a political space. That's all. It's a little bit of both. That's my point. All right. I'm going to end it here. And make sure I haven't missed anyone. All right. Trudy, Pop Reality, and Charles Pieta. Thank you, man. I appreciate all the help for the show, guys. You guys help make this show work. This show is essentially powered by you. So thank you all for your support. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.